Hello everyone and welcome back to the Council of Elrond. My name is Dave and as usual I'm joined by my brother Johnny. Say hello Johnny.
Hello. Am I supposed to say hello, Johnny?
Yeah, I don't know. But today's episode we are talking about a very forgetful yet very memorable character, the legendary innkeeper Barliman Butterbur. So, today we are discussing who he is and why I believe that he's actually pivotal to the forces of good ultimately defeating Sauron in the end. So, Johnny, yeah, you're going to have to let me know if you think he is an important character or not.
Hugely.
I like him.
Hugely.
Do you like him?
Yeah. Sorry, in the intro when you said he was a forgetful character, I thought you meant that he's easily forgetful for us. And I was like, not at all. And then I was like, oh, wait, I get it now. But it took me a little while to get
it.
Yeah.
He's forgetful. We're going to learn a little bit more about his forgetfulness. But yes, Johnny, just to update the people or keep them on course of who this guy is. Who is Barliman?
Keep them on their toes. Barliman Butterbur is the barman, I suppose. He's got a great name for a barman. He's the innkeeper and the barman in the Prancing Pony in the village of Brie when we see the hobbits arrive in Brie and they're waiting for Gandalf and he doesn't arrive and they're a bit scared because they're in the land of the big people, the big folk. And Barliman is he's kind of like their point of contact. And he's the only one that like knows who Gandalf is and whatever. So they're kind of like, we can, relate to this guy. And they weren't too scared of him. So that was nice. He was a friendly face. He was very busy. Yeah. He was rushed off his feet all the time. So he didn't really have too much time to chat to them.
That's good. That's good. As long as movie viewers know exactly who we're talking about as well. I'm sure
he's the guy that goes, Gandalf? Gandalf. Oh, I remember. Elderly chap, long beard, pointy hat. I haven't seen him in 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. And his performance played by David Weatherly was absolutely incredible for the Fellowship of the Ring. Unfortunately, he did pass away, yes, at the very end of last year, December 2024. So that was awful sad. But I liked how you mentioned that he's like a point of contact. It kind of reminds me of, working for an events company or, working for a venue or something. You're like, right, your point of contact is Barliman Butterbur. So yeah, I like
or it's
that.
Like playing a video game. It's like, make sure you got to go investigate, find Barliman, and you go around like, gotta find this Barliman. Eventually you're like, yes, found Barliman. Awesome. We can like checkpoint reached.
Oh, I love Barliman. But you also mentioned as well how his name was very suitable, Barliman. So it's Barliman, but it's very close to barley, as in like Barley. So he is an ale brewer. And the prancing...
A nail brewer.
An ale brewer.
He brews
so
nails.
The prancing pony in Brie was kept by the Butterbur family for many generations, and Barliman inherited it before the War of the Ring. We don't know exactly when because we don't have too much of his history, but he had 2 Hobbit employees. So the first one named Bob, he worked in the stables, and the second was the unfortunately named Nob. And he was a servant that worked in the Prancing Pony. So yeah, Bob and Nob, I think they're 2 funny characters, and it's cool because in the movie we see Frodo and the hobbits arrive, and it's all like the land of the big folk, and we get those great prosthetics and the men on stilts and everything.
Yeah.
But
it's class.
I suppose one of the cool differences in the book is that a lot of the clientele that are at the Prancing Pony, there's dwarves, there's men, there's queer folk, but like evil, like possibly evil men as well. We get this
cantankerous men, I believe they use the
cantankerous men, and of course there's hobbits. So not just the hobbits that arrive there, but because it seems so unusual in the movie, like hobbits, 4 hobbits. But
yeah, that's true.
As we know, there are hobbits that work there, and the movie does pay a bit of an homage to that with the door and everything, right?
That's
at
true.
The gate.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so it's like they wouldn't have that there in place if it wasn't fairly regular that shorter people, either dwarves or hobbits would be kind of frequenting the town. So yeah, I suppose it probably makes sense that there would be quite a good flow of them in and out of the town for them to put that door in place. So but I was going to say, is it Nob that we get to see a bit more of in the books? Like he's kind of actually scurrying around the place quite a bit, and like is he the one that kind of has a bit of a run in? I don't want to be jumping ahead, but has a run in with one of the Nazgul.
Fire away.
I think now I could be confusing him with maybe it's Merry. Maybe it's Merry Eddock. Who no, it's Merry goes out for a stroll, doesn't he? He goes out for a stroll when they're in the Prancing
Merry
Pony.
goes missing for a while.
He goes missing, and he kind of gets hit with the black breath by a Nazgul. And then Nob is out like walking around, and he sees like this dark figure leaning over someone. He doesn't know who this person is at the time, and he runs towards them, and he kind of goes, "Hey, what are you doing? Get away from there!" And the dark figure runs away, and then he comes over and he finds Merry like unconscious, and he kind of helps him out and like resuscitates him or whatever, and gives him some, I don't know, water or whatever he does. And I think that's Nob that does that. So if my memory serves, which it usually doesn't, but you never know.
Just like Barliman. Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. Like when reading the couple of chapters that Barliman is in, he's constantly having service from both Bob and Nob. Like obviously Nob is working out in the stables. Bob is inside a lot of the time, but there is a big run-in with ponies going missing and horses flying off. So Nob does come into it a good bit. Yeah. But I touched a little bit there earlier when I spoke about changes from the book and the movie, and just to get into a little bit more of the changes. In the movie, we see it was always the plan from the beginning for the hobbits to meet Gandalf at the Prancing Pony. He does say like, meet me at Brie at the Prancing Pony or whatever. So Gandalf like told the hobbits to meet him there. However, in the book, it is Tom Bombadil that actually introduces the idea for the hobbits to seek Barliman when they go to Brie. So Gandalf had never mentioned Barliman at this time, because why would he? He had no reason to. And just to describe Barliman, because I think it was a very accurate portrayal in the Fellowship of the Ring movie, he's described as a short, fat man with a bald head and a red face. He had a white apron on and was bustling out of one door and in through another, carrying a tray laden with full mugs. So I think they kind of nailed David Weatherly's performance. Especially down to the apron and carrying around things.
The big red nose.
Yeah, exactly. But when the hobbits arrive in Brie in the chapter at the sign of the Prancing Pony, we instantly see that he is a forgetful man, as he's basically always like, hobbits? Now, what does that remind me of? And he's there like snapping his fingers and he's like, no, there's a thought there, but now it's gone back. He also says, one thing drives out another, so to speak. I'm that busy tonight. My head is going round. So he's cool. Very, very forgetful.
And he's always doing that. When you said he snaps his fingers, that's very like, he's like, every time it's like he's always got 5 things in his head and he can only remember 2 of them. And then if you bring up if you bring up the 3rd or the 4th thing, he's like, snaps his fingers. And he's like, and he's forgotten the first thing. It's like
exactly.
That kind of person.
That's exactly it. Because like he does kind of have that in the Fellowship of the Ring as well, where he's like, Gandalf, and then you see the light come into his eyes, and he's like, Gandalf, tall, pointy, had great beard, or whatever he says. But and whatever it is, by the way, the way in which Butterbur speaks sounds very much, it reads very much like how an Irishman speaks. So I feel like anytime I'm going to be doing any of his quotes, I'll be putting on our local accent, because I think he sounds really similar to our uncles, actually, even the way he tells the story. So so this scene in the Prancing Pony, it plays out quite similar to the film version. I'm not going to go through every little bit, but Frodo inquires about the hooded character, which is obviously Aragorn. Barliman responds with, "He's one of the wandering folk, rangers we call them. He seldom talks, not but what he can tell a rare tale when he has the mind. He disappears for a month or a year, and then he pops up again. He was in and out pretty often last spring, but I haven't seen him about lately. What his right name is I've never heard, but he's known round here as Strider." I love that. I love the way you're like, all the book and the movie. I love they take exactly what you need.
It's so good, isn't it?
And a little bit later, in the same conversation, he also mentions to Frodo how Strider moves quickly on his long shanks. So why is that interesting?
Long shanks. Why is that interesting? Is it because of the name Strider, like that he strides, or is there something?
Yeah, but do you remember in the movie where it might be mentioned at one point?
What, the term Longshanks?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, do you not remember? Barliman.
This is escaping me. And I can't believe.
Oh, really? Like, when I read the word Longshanks, it immediately jumps to me when Strider brings the hobbits upstairs and Sam is like,
Oh, I love you, Longshanks.
I love you, Longshanks. So that's obviously where they took that from. So, and I had to Google. I was like, what does Longshanks mean? Because I'm pretty sure that's the name of like a cat in Harry Potter or something. I never really knew what the term meant, but it just means long legs.
I thought it was like an old pirate or something.
Sounds like an old pirate. I'm pretty sure it's the name of a cat in something. And I don't know why Harry Potter jumped to mind. I just assumed where else do they name cats?
Yeah.
But,
yeah, that's class. That's very good. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast or something the other day talking about Lord of the Rings, and they were saying how, the way that Peter Jackson, where I think it was like a video essay or something. It was talking about why the Lord of the Rings movies feels like Tolkien. And it was like talking about how loads of the characters that when they're speaking, they're using dialogue that was written exactly by Tolkien for exactly that moment. But then in other situations, when they needed somebody to say something, they were like, we don't have something exactly for this person here, but let's just go back into the source material and take something that a different character said at a completely different moment, but it's still the words of Tolkien and they're using it. And it's like, they're like, oh, it actually fits perfectly into this situation as well. And it's just like, it's something that I suppose the Rings of Power wasn't able to do as much because they weren't able to get the words of Tolkien, I suppose. So
they were trying to shoehorn things more so than kind of pay respect to things. And I think a large part of that is due to the incredible work of Fran Walsh and Philip Owens. You can see did so well. The behind the scenes of them talking about that. But since you brought it up, what's a really good example of where Tolkien's work was moved into another character?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. There's parts where Treebeard's given Tom Bombadil's lines, for example. And again, that's quite a good one because there's a lot of similarities between Tom Bombadil and Treebeard, and like, you know, they're both like the oldest. There's debate between which one of them is actually older, and there's so they're both like, you know, protectors of the forest and things like that. So that's quite a good one, and it's fitting as well. Like, if you're going to give lines of Tom Bombadil, he's not going to be in the movie. Who are you going to give those lines to? It's like, should I give them to Gimli or Gandalf? It's like, Treebeard. That was a good choice to do that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Is there another obvious one that you want me to?
No, that was the thing that jumped to my mind immediately, especially where Treebeard is saying like, "You should not be waking. Dig deep, eat earth, go to sleep."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't imagine Tom Bombadil saying it that slowly, but you know.
Yeah, he sings like that.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, back to the book. We have in the chapter Strider, which is the next chapter on, Barliman greets the hobbits in their lodgings, and he admits that he now recognizes who they are with this quote: "I won't give you away, but I was told that this Baggins would be going by the name of Underhill, and I was given a description that fits you well enough, if I may say so." Frodo then asks who told Barliman this news, to which Butterbur responds with Gandalf. And another quote here is, "A wizard they say he is, but he's a good friend of mine, whether or no. But now I don't know what he'll have to say to me if I see him again. Turn all my ale sour, or me into a block of wood, I shouldn't wonder." So, like, you can kind of see, I'm not going to put in every single quote of Barliman, but like a lot of his quotes, you see he is super forgetful, a little bit dithery, but like he's an honourable,
he's a good man,
gentleman. He's a good man, and he pours a good pint.
Oh, a fantastic pint.
They come in pints. So there is something that plays out in this little scenario here, Johnny. I just want to see if you remember what Butterbur did or he didn't do that was so crucial to the plot.
Yeah, he forgot to deliver a letter. And he kind of promised Gandalf that he would, and I am struggling now to remember. Was it that, I'm trying to remember, did he leave a letter that Barliman was supposed to give to Frodo to say what Gandalf was going to do, and he was like, I'm going to go here. And then he was like, oh, and he also mentioned in the letter that like Aragorn was his friend, so that was a confirmation
And ally.
Yeah. He's ever been his friend and ally. Barley Hedge is like, that is a lie. How the tables turned. So
the turntables.
in the letter, he told them to carry on with Strider basically and make for Rivendell or something like that. But Barliman just kind of forgot to give it to them.
Yeah, and it's funny as well because obviously we see how suspicious Frodo and the gang are of Aragorn as well. And obviously this letter doesn't appear in the movie, but the quote here from this chapter, Butterbur says, 3 months back he walked into my room without a knock. Barley, he says, I'm off in the morning. Will you do something for me? You've only to name it, I said. I'm in a hurry, said he, and I've no time myself. But I want a message took to the Shire. Have you anyone you can send and trust to go? I can find someone, I said. Tomorrow, maybe, or the day after. Make it tomorrow, he says, and then gave me a letter. It's addressed plain enough, said Mr. Butterbur, producing a letter from his pocket and reading out the address slowly and proudly. Mr. Frodo Baggins, Bag End, Hobbiton in the Shire. So, I was going to ask you what's in this letter, but you've got the main things. Gandalf is away, and also Aragorn's heritage, or who he is, and you can trust him.
I believe, though, just to come in on that, I believe that Aragorn had already kind of convinced him, and they'd already agreed to take Aragorn along with them on their trip at this point. But then the letter came out, and that was the final piece of evidence that they needed to kind of go, okay, yeah, we can trust this guy. Because at that time, I think Sam was very much against Aragorn coming with them, and there was there's a bit of a debate as to whether he should go or not. I think Frodo said, I think we can trust this guy, and I think we should follow him. And Sam was like, Mr. Frodo, no. And then taking Sam's quote from another point. Then Butterbur produced this letter, and it was like, there you go.
Yeah, and I think it was when Butterbur left the room that Frodo actually read out the letter, and as it happens, I have the letter right here, so I would like to read it for you now. So the letter says, Dear Frodo, bad news has reached me here. I must go off at once. You had better leave Bag End soon, and get out of the Shire before the end of July at latest. I will return as soon as I can, and I will follow you, if I find that you are gone. Leave a message for me here, if you pass through Brie. You can trust the landlord, Butterbur. You may meet a friend of mine on the road, a man, lean, dark, tall, by some called Strider. He knows our business and will help you. Make for Rivendell. There I hope we meet again. If I do not come, Elrond will advise you. Yours in haste, Gandalf. P.S. Do not use it again. Not for any reason whatever. Do not travel by night. P.P.S. Make sure that it is the real Strider. There are many strange men on the roads. His true name is Aragorn. And then Gandalf includes a little poem that also hints at Aragorn's lineage. And you definitely know the beginning of the poem. Do you remember which poem it is?
It's the one that has the all that glitter. Well, what's the quote? It's the most famous quote. All the
tattooed quote on every girl's thigh.
All
the girls I hang out with anyway.
I can't even remember that. It's all that glitters is not gold, or all. Hang on.
Let's just switch those two words.
All that's gold doesn't.
All that is gold.
All that is gold does not glitter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
All that is gold does not glitter. And do you remember the next line? This is the famous line.
Oh, this is the famous one. I'm going blank. I'm like this. Hang on. All that's gold does not glitter. All those who wander are not lost. Yeah?
Yes. Not all those who wander are lost.
And then he just, is that the one where it's the sword that was broken shall be, does he talk about that in it?
Yes. The final line.
The crownless again shall be king.
Yes, well done. That is the very last line. Yeah, well done.
I'll get there. I don't have time now to doing it live because this is going to be very boring to our listeners. So I'll let you just fill in the blanks there.
Yeah, so the whole poem is, all that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes of fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be the blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king.
Yes.
So that's a Yes, that's a badass poem, and
It's
I love the way
poem, yeah.
after the poem, like Gandalf, I love the way he wrote this because
Yeah.
he's got his letter, then he's got PS, then he's got PPS, then he's like, oh, I'll put in a little poem here.
He's
and
also
then after the
really
poem-
in a hurry. He's like, yours in haste. He's hiding. And he's like, wait, always time for a poem.
yeah, but at the very end, then he puts in PPPS. I hope Butterbur sends this promptly. A worthy man, but his memory is like a lumber room. Thing wanted, always buried. If he forgets, I shall roast him.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, PPPS is just like, maybe that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned how like he's so hasty, and he says in haste, and even earlier. Butterbur, I didn't put the quote in, but Butterbur is talking about Gandalf, and he's like, "Oh yes, a good man, quite a hasty man." And I'm like, I love that. I love the word hasty in Lord of the Rings. Like I never knew what that word meant before I'd watched the movies, or even for a prolonged few years after watching the movies, I'd only hear the word hasty from Treebeard, from the Fellowship, or from the Two Towers.
I suppose it's not like an everyday word, but yeah.
No.
I suppose the Lord of the Rings has just shaped our vocabulary, for life now. Whenever there's some words that you hear, that you just like, Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
yeah. So, since Frodo never actually received the letter, he did the exact opposite of what Gandalf instructed, because he, of course, travelled at night. Gandalf said, he stayed for ages. Gandalf said, "Do not use it," and I like how he didn't say what it is, but he obviously wore the One Ring a few times, and he initially didn't trust Strider, and like you mentioned, he most importantly left the Shire 2 months late, and I want to get into the back end of this podcast about the importance of this, the change in this departure time, but we'll move on. I just put this quote in here as well. Barliman says, "2 black men were at the door asking for a hobbit called Baggins. I bid the black fellows be off and slammed the door on them." So I believe he should immediately have been cancelled after this comment.
Did he put that on Twitter?
No, he had to apologise like about a week later, but yeah. Obviously this is referring to the Nazgul, and this again shows more a character to Butterbur, where he's able to slam the door into 2 Nazgul's face.
Yeah. I told them Nazgul to feck off. It's like, what? Fair play to you.
Yeah, but like how we discussed there, Butterbur Frodo didn't trust Strider at first, but Butterbur was the one that really, he didn't trust Strider. He knew he was the local patron and all that, but Butterbur decided, no, I will offer my services instead. And then Aragorn's like, really? Like, you're going to go all the way to Mordor? And then Butterbur's like, Mordor? I've never really left Brie. Like, he's all kind of, he's like, I don't know, like, will I help these poor fellows? Yeah, exactly. But Aragorn tries to...
Like you said, he's just a helpful guy, and it's in his nature to try and... So he's like, oh, I'll help you out. I'm sure that won't take too long. Like, I'll help you down to the next village or something, he probably thought. But, But he wants to be helpful.
And he has these 4 customers and guests, and he's just like, look, I don't want them to be carried off by this strange man, queer folk that come in here.
Doesn't want a bad Yelp review.
Yeah, that's it exactly. But of course, Aragorn does try to assure Barliman that they are in good hands, and I had to put this quote in because it's a sick burn from Aragorn, where he says, "Then who would you take up with?" asked Strider. "A fat innkeeper who only remembers his own name because people shout at him all day?" I love that. He's so forgetful that he wouldn't know his own name if it weren't for a bunch of screaming people in the bar being like, "Butterbur, Barliman." I love that.
That's excellent. I love it.
Yeah. So after this brief discussion between Barliman, Strider, and the hobbits, he leaves them back to their lodgings. And then that night, the inn was attacked by the Black Riders. So Barliman was shocked by the terrible events. He was traumatized purely, and he was noticeably upset in the morning when he discovered that the stable doors had been opened. All the horses and ponies kept that he had kept there had all escaped.
They're fairly unstable that night.
Not very stable stables. Yeah. But like we mentioned, he's a sound man, and as compensation, he purchased the only pony found to be available from Bill Fernie, who demanded at least thrice its proper price. So
12 silver coins?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't want to bring too much of Bill Fernie into the podcast because we talked about it, Bill, before, and that's a separate tale.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right.
I think
Kind
it was
of like
12 silver coins or something like that. But oh yeah,
12
exactly.
pieces of silver or something like that. Or am I getting mixed up with Jesus and Judas?
I think yeah, the pieces of silver definitely sounds more Judasy than Bill Fernie. But maybe that was like,
well, Bill Fernie does sound very Judasy as well.
oh
doesn't he?
yeah, he's not a nice man.
He's a scoundrel.
He is a complete scoundrel. Yeah, he hoodwinked them properly. So yeah, but the important thing was it was over 3 times his worth. Yeah, I remember that.
Well, I mean, you know, demand goes
Yeah.
up. So
I know. Yeah, I mean, he was just
supply
good business. Yeah, it's supply and demand.
yeah,
it's true.
It's good business, but Barliman gave the pony to the hobbits along with 18 silver pennies, although the loss of the money was a harsh blow to him. Fortunately, many of the horses had only been set loose and were found again later. So Mary's ponies fled to Tom Bombadil, who eventually returned them to Barliman for use at the inn. So it all worked its way out eventually. But yeah, that's all we see of Butterbur in the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. So Johnny, what did Gandalf do when he met Butterbur again? Do you recall?
Well, he got very angry, first of all,
Yeah.
from the outset, and he scolded him. He didn't quite boil him now, but he got angry
Or
at
roast him, as Butterbur was
sorry,
afraid
roast,
of.
not boil. Yeah. I was just thinking of all the different ways that you could boil him, mash him, roast him, stick him in a stew. He got angry at first, but then eventually he forgave him, and he didn't just forgive him. He went beyond that. He actually then blessed his beer and said that it would be the best spear in the land for 7 years, I believe.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, very, very good. So I have here later at the chapter Council of Elrond. So shout out to the Council of Elrond podcast. Gandalf recounts his encounter with Butterbur after the hobbits left Brie. Barliman tells Gandalf the news and fears that he let Gandalf down, especially that the hobbits went off with Strider, because that was the main thing actually when he's talking to Gandalf. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, like they went off with Strider. And then suddenly Gandalf says, and I thought this was a funny quote as well, he goes, "Ass! Fool! Thrice worthy and beloved Barliman. It's the best news I've had since midsummer. It's worth a gold piece at least. May your beer be laid under an enchantment of surpassing excellence for 7 years." So I like the start of that quote is the word ass.
Ass.
I don't remember that being in the quote at all. Did you?
No, but I would, now that I'm thinking about it, I'd love to hear Sir Ian McKellen like delivering a nice ass.
Yeah. Oh, he would do it perfectly. Absolutely.
I can imagine them just there, like Peter Jackson, director, be like, okay, Sir Ian, that was great. Now let's get another one where you're a bit more joyful or now a bit more angry or whatever. Like having all these different takes of him just shouting ass.
Yeah, we'd have a compilation of just like ass, 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 ass. Yeah, that'd be good. So he does get a brief little mention in the Council of Elrond, which is quite cool, but a brief, the town of Brie. But do we ever hear from Butterbur again?
Yeah, he pops up again in the Return of the King, doesn't he? They go back.
He does.
They go back to Brie, and they have a good old time.
They do. Yeah. So you're right. Like they do after the events of the War of the Ring. They do actually go back to Brie. So like the Sauron is destroyed, the One Ring is destroyed. Frodo expresses his desires to Elrond? Yeah, I think he expresses his desires to Elrond that he wants to return to Brie again to see Butterbur specifically. So you can see the impact. Yeah. Like at some point, Frodo does say to the hobbits like, "Oh, that Butterbur, he really messed things up, or he made a big mess of things like way back in the Fellowship." But here he's at a point a year later, and he's like, "God, I'd love to go back to Brie. I'd love to pop into the Prancing Pony just to see him again." And so they do that. They head back, and Gandalf and Frodo told Butterbur all the tales of their story, to which his responding comments were,
"Oh wait, sorry. Before you tell the quote,
yeah,
isn't he just like so? You know, he kind of just listens to me. He's like, oh yeah, geez, that sounds like a great story. Anyway,
yeah.
And he's like goes off, sorry, can I get you something over there? And like just doesn't think much of what they're like. He doesn't really think it's a big deal or something.
Well, it's more, again, this is why I said he's quite Irish, because I'll read out the quotes of like his comments in response to Gandalf and Frodo saying how much they like they saved the world.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
his quotes are, you don't say, Mr. Baggins, or is it Mr. Underhill? I'm getting so mixed up. You don't say, Master Gandalf. Well, I never. Who'd have thought it in our times? So I love that. Like, I'd love to know exactly what sentence he was responding to. It's like, and then I cut off the troll's head. Oh, who'd have thought it in our times?
Imagine.
In this day and age.
This day and age.
So then the conversation after all this world shattering events, it kind of switches over to Butterbur, and he kind of goes on to tell them about everyone who's died in the parish. Basically, he names them by name. He's like, "Oh, did you hear Margaret, Rosie Cotton, or whatever? That she's dead, and he died." And well, he does talk a lot about how there's a lot of evil around Brie and the prancing pony at this point, and he's saying there's a lots of like warriors about, and it's not great. And he's saying business has been poor as well. And Gandalf mentions how the King of Gondor would love to visit sometime, to which Barliman is obviously shocked to hear. And he's like, why would he ever want to come to the prancing pony, or how would he even know what it is, even though the beer has been tasting amazing since Gandalf put a word on it. And then obviously Gandalf shares that the king is Strider. And in the chapter Homeward Bound, I have the quote here. The eyes in his broad face grew round, and his mouth opened wide, and he gasped. Strider, he exclaimed when he got his breath back. Him with a crown and all, and a golden cup. Well, what are we coming to? Better times, for Brie at any rate, said Gandalf. I hope so, I'm sure, said Butterbur. Well, this has been the nicest chat I've had in a month of Mondays. So he's so good to listen to. Like, he's so positive and upbeat, and
be a good conversationalist.
Yeah, and like obviously I would have loved to have included like every single quote from Butterbur, but I especially like that previous one where he's like, "So I says to him, I said," and then he says to me,
and
says
he says,
and I'm like,
yeah, and no, don't do that, says I, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So anyone that's unfamiliar, like that's very common Irish twang for so like
just a storytelling kind of technique, where you put says he and says I at the end of a sentence, like yeah. So where are you going, says he, and I'm going down the road, says I, and why would you do that, says he, like that kind of way of telling the story. It's very typical Irish.
It's so good, and it's so. I love that where you tell the story as it's told. You kind of act it out, and then you add in the he said or she said or whatever, just like you would read it in a book. Yeah. So I love that. So we don't have too much more on Butterbur, but I have a couple of first of all, I've a couple of did you know facts. So fact numero uno is the original draft of Barliman Butterbur. So in the first version of the events at the Prancing Pony, written in pencil, the name of the innkeeper was actually Timothy Titus, a name from an old incomplete story by Tolkien. So this character bore no resemblance to Mr. Butterbur. Timothy Titus was written over in ink with the name Barnabas Butterbur in Tolkien's manuscript, and was created as a very, very fat hobbit before he was subsequently changed into the man called Barliman. So that's how he started off in life.
Evolution.
Really fat hobbit. Yeah. And originally called Timothy Titus. So I'm glad they went for Barliman Butterbur. It rolls off the tongue. Yeah. And it's way better.
Definitely got a good ring to it. Yeah. Barliman Butterbur, the barman from Brie.
Yeah. And another little did you know fact is, in the Desolation of Smog prologue, Butterbur Sr. was actually visible running the bar at the Prancing Pony. He's credited... Yep. And he's credited as Barney Butterbur, along with his wife Betsy. So doing a quick Google search of this, you can see kind of a pixelated image of a guy I assume is in the background with a big beard, great big bushy beard, and he looks like he could definitely be a Butterbur. So I wanted to just go back for a minute to Barliman forgetting the letter that he was supposed to deliver to Frodo 2 months earlier. So Johnny, if you think about it, can you think of how this delay affected Frodo if he had received the letter when he had?
Well, he would have set out a lot earlier. I suppose that's the main thing, because he hung around and waited till his birthday in September when he should have been leaving, like, July kind of time. So
end of July at the latest, Gandalf said.
Yeah, and so like, why was that important? It's important because, like, the Nazgul nearly nabbed him. He should have been getting out way before, and he would have had more of an advantage, and the road wouldn't have been as dangerous. Then also, I suppose the other thing that was important was what you mentioned before. Gandalf told him not to go at night, not to walk at night. Whereas the whole time he was walking, he was like, "Jeez, it's a lovely evening for a walk." Because I reckon we get a good 20 miles walk tonight. As they're
20
singing.
miles.
Yeah. So those are two quite important things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, I suppose you hit the nail on the head there, with the main one being the Nazgul didn't arrive into the Shire until September. So if Frodo travelled on time, he certainly wouldn't have encountered them, and he wouldn't have almost died and been, like, seriously injured.
So the reason Frodo had to end up leaving Middle-earth and go to Valinor was Butterbur's fault.
Yeah, pretty much. The road would have been a lot easier, as you mentioned. It would have started in autumn rather than winter. Well, like, the road for the Fellowship, I suppose, not Frodo's journey. But they set out on the 25th of December, I believe, was when they left Rivendell.
That's right.
And then also the Fellowship would have definitely reached Gondor before Sauron had laid siege to Minas Tirith in March. So just one little forgetful trip to... Well, actually, Butterbur was supposed to give his mail to a friend, and give the letter to a friend. Like, he did say it'll be tomorrow or the next day. And Butterbur goes on to say, like, "Oh, I tried to find someone and I couldn't find someone. And then, another 5 things went into my head and not enough came out." Just like how you mentioned, 5 things go in, only 2. Yeah, exactly. But can I ask you, Juan Tan, did the delay have any positive effects for Frodo?
Yeah, while you were speaking, I was trying to think of that. I was like, I'm sure there is a positive effect. And let me see. I know that there's something there, but I can't think of it now. I'm struggling.
Well, I think, as I preface this whole podcast, I think that there's a lot of positives from this. I don't even think there's just one. So I'll go into discuss what my thinking is here. So, like, if Frodo and Sam had left earlier, then first of all, they perhaps wouldn't have met Merry and Pippin on their way, because they just kind of happened to bump into them. So they may not have joined them. But more importantly, the Fellowship may not even have been formed, because
they might not have run into Strider, is it? Or I'm pretty sure Strider would have found them, because he was, like, keeping an eye out for them the whole time anyway. And he was
Strider would, and Strider would have been in Rivendell. But unlike the movie version, we've discussed this before. In the movie, the Council of Elrond is a meeting set up, and we see the likes of Boromir traveling because of the rumors of the One Ring has been found.
And that wasn't the case at all.
Exactly. What was the case with the Council of Elrond?
It was just like a kind of a last minute meeting that they decided to have, and it was just whoever happened to be in Rivendell at that time, and they were like, "Oh, well, Boromir he'd been trekking for like 120 days or something, and he through like brambles and bushes and stuff. He arrived. He was like, "Do you guys have hot water here? I need to have a shower." And so he just kind of happened to be there, and the same with like Gimli and Legolas and all of them. It wasn't a like planned or organized meeting, I suppose. So again, that was happenstance. And I mean, there's lots of things that would have been very, very different, I suppose. But at the end of the day, he probably wouldn't have got stabbed on Weathertop. So I think, and just obviously the earlier the journey, like the earlier everything started, it would have also, he would have made for Rivendell, and then something would have happened, and he would have set out again, probably, again with Gandalf, and with, well, again, Gandalf may have, I don't know, it would have been a lot different. And what you say is correct, that it's very probable that the Fellowship would not have been formed, or it would have been very different.
Yeah, certainly not in the same way. And first of all, you mentioned Boromir, so shout out to our Who is Boromir Really episode. If you want to know about his trek to Rivendell, go check out that episode. I think it's one of our very early one. So
Back in the day.
check that out. But yeah, Boromir, Legolas, and Gimli, they all just happened to be there. It was an impromptu meeting, and they were all there for completely separate reasons from each other.
They were.
So,
but also, do you remember why they had that number of people in the Fellowship?
9. Well, 9 to counteract the 9 Nazgul.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what Elrond
So 9
says. He's like, okay, 9 to well, like you just said, to face the 9 forces of evil, the 9 Nazgul. So I was just kind of thinking there, it probably wouldn't have been them, but he would probably have been sent out with a Fellowship of 9. Is what may have happened, in the end. So, but yeah, they would have been our badass heroes that we got.
I mean, yeah, it was luck or it was fate that brought them all together at the same time. But if the hobbits had arrived 2 months earlier, it probably would have been the likes of Frodo, Sam, Gandalf, Aragorn, and then just like a bunch of other random Rivendell elves. Because
I mean, it might not have been that
Merry
bad
Pippin.
either. Yeah, you would have upgraded from Merry and Pippin. You would have got 2 like Rivendell elves.
Yes, but also while you have to remember as well, they
have their part to play. Merry and Pippin.
But I was going to say that if Frodo and Sam had left in July rather than September, because they left in September, they were fleeing the Nazgul, and obviously when they were fleeing the Nazgul, they came across the Barrow Downs, and what did they find there?
Well, they found the daggers. The daggers,
nice shiny
of
daggers.
Agmar, which were, I suppose that was
of Westerness.
Of Westerness, yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah. So I'm sorry, they were used in the battles of Agmar, and yeah, I suppose that is a fairly pivotal point or a fairly important moment, because of course that dagger that was used then by Merry to stab the Witch King. So there's a whole like. A butterfly flaps his wings, and 3,000 miles away,
a Butterbur flaps his wings. The Butterbur effect, that's what we should call it. But yeah, obviously this is seriously crucial for anyone that doesn't know about the books. When they find this dagger, this weapon of Westerness, I think it's the dagger of Westerness or something. It's obviously crucial because that's the weapon that Merry later uses to stab the Witch King, cutting his link and his ties with Sauron and allowing Éowyn to deliver the killing blow.
The only blade in Middle-earth that probably would have been able to do that and cause any sort of damage to the Witch King at all, because this blade was created for the one purpose of fighting against the Witch King.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you have it, folks. Barliman nearly single-handedly doomed Middle-earth with his forgetfulness, but in the end, the events lined up in a way that led to the ultimate victory over Sauron. So I think he's not a bad guy after all.
No. Oh no. He's the finest. Bit forgetful, but at the end of the day, he gives good chat and he pours a good pint.
And that's all we want. So I think I'm going to head out for a good pint now and wrap up the podcast there. So thank you all so much, guys, for joining us on the Council of Elrond. It's been great. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, and also on Spotify. You can leave us a rating or a review there, or on whatever podcast platform that you're listening to this on. And also you can contact us on @Mellon_heads on Twitter or X, and Mellonheads official on Instagram, I think it is, and a bunch of other social media things there. So yeah, go check them out, and we'll love you and leave you. See you next time, guys.
Sayonara.